Right, welcome back to another video of session management. In this one, we're going to basically speak about routing tracks. We're going to literally concentrate on routing tracks. Basically, routing is taking audio from one track and sending it to another track. And we have what we call sub-mixes. Sub-mixes in session management basically allow you to grab the audio that is coming from the group that you've created. That means the group of the tracks, right? For example, our drum kit, right? And basically send it to one track so that they all play through that one particular track. So whenever you're transferring audio from one track to the next, right? Let's say the entirety of that audio. In this case, you taking it out of the outputs, which is this section here of all the tracks. So in a track, you'll have inputs, which is here. Yeah, that is what is going into this track, right? And then you'll have outputs, which is here, that is going out of this track, basically going out either to another track, or in this case currently to an output, which is in this case goes straight to my speakers, right? So currently all of my tracks in the session are going straight to my speakers or headphones, you understand? And that's why we've got output 1 and 2, right? But what I want to do is basically then send them to one track. There are some advantages for that, right? So I don't want to use the terminology sent, but I want to route them to another track, right? And then that track will contain or will play through all the tracks contained in this group, right? And I'll basically explain the advantages that comes with that. Okay, cool. So let's look at this. So I currently have, let's go here again, from here all the way to here. I have all these tracks selected and I want to take them to one particular track, which is generally what we call an aux track, an auxiliary track within Pro Tools, right? Now, an auxiliary track is a track that can basically pass through audio, right, within Pro Tools. That means not pass through as in to move through audio, but its main function is to contain audio going through it, right? So I've got this track selected, which are my audio tracks for my drum kit. And then what I'll do now, I'm going to press Shift and Alt. Do you understand that? Right? I'm going to repeat that again. Shift, Alt, right? And then route them. There are many ways to route, right? This is one of the techniques. I'll show you another one, right? Using my electric guitars, using my bass, and using my lead vox. So this might turn into a long video. So prepare yourself, right? So I'm going to press Shift and Alt. What this does together down right now is tell Pro Tools that whatever I'm going to do, the two buttons that I've pressed, Shift and Alt, tells Pro Tools that whatever movement I'm going to do now, do to all selected, right? Do you understand that? So Shift Alt means do to all that are selected. And currently, what do we have selected? Our drum kit. So whilst I have Shift and Alt pressed down, I continue pressing it down. Then I go to the output of one of the tracks, any of the tracks that you want. Click on that output. Go to New Track, right? You're going to find the New Track dialog box. Now, when you create a submix, at this point, you can let go of Shift and Alt, right? Now, when you create a submix, right, you want to make sure that it is stereo. This is very important because that track is receiving information that is coming from left and right simultaneously. So you want to make sure that it's stereo. Please make sure in whatever situation you are in, whenever you create a submix, it has to be stereo because it is receiving tracks that are either routed to the left or that have an output that is in the left or the right. You understand? Depending on the panning that you have on them. For example, we've got mono here. This is coming in the center, so it is coming through left and right in your headphones, but it's coming through the center because it's mono, right? So 1, 2, 3 4 tracks are mono. These ones that are still going to also go through our sub mix track, which is the aux track we are creating right here, have a left and right. You understand? And if all of them are going to be going through one track, you want to make sure that the left and right channels are represented very well, right? And this is why then you create a stereo track. Then the type of track you're going to use is an aux input, otherwise known as auxiliary input track, which allows audio to pass through it, right? And then I'm going to rename it, obviously, as you can see there, by pressing the back button on my keyboard, and then I'm going to say drum kit sub, right? So it's the sub mix of my drum kit. And then I'm going to click create. I want you to notice something now, right? Now that I've clicked create, what has happened basically? Basically then the outputs of all of those that were selected, because we pressed shift and alt together, which means do to all selected, right, are now routed to the input, right, of my new aux track named drum kit sub. You understand? So all these audios right here come out of these tracks and go into this one. So all the levels, the signals, right, or that are contained in these individual tracks right here, these are mono, right, and these are stereo, these two are stereo, go through to this stereo track right here. That's how you see that it's stereo. It's got 2 meters left and right. This is left and this is right, right, are going through right this track. So they're going out of here into the input. Like I said, this is the input part, right, which means now they're going to play through this track. So if I play them, and since I've grouped them, I can solo them now, right? If I play them, they're going to come through this one, and you'll see this one reflect on the meter right here, right? There we go. So you can see them. You might not be able to hear them. I was struggling with connecting my OBS so that it actually records desktop audio. But you do see the signal going through. So if I decide to mute all of this track, all these tracks, nothing will pass through this meter right here. So let's do that. As you can see, there is no audio passing through. Now I unmute them. Now there is audio passing through. Do you see the advantages of session management, right? I used grouping, right, to basically mute and unmute and solo, right? And now, because they all are playing through this track right here, which is my aux track, right, they are now, I can now basically control them all at once, which is the same as me doing this basically, right? But instead of now messing with the balance here, right, I can easily just go bam, right? And now it has affected all that signal going here. So if I want to reduce my drum kit as a unit without, and maybe I have my, what do we call this, drum kit group deactivated, right? Let's say I have my drum kit group deactivated. As you can see, it's not highlighted. And then instead of coming to here, I can literally just come to this level right here, and I can reduce my entire drum kit by just moving this fader or increase it if I want to. You understand that, right? So now what I'm going to do is just color, and I'm going to have to select that obviously, and I'm going to choose none. I like making my should I say sub mixes black, should I say, right? And I make them all black due to the mere fact that I can easily identify that this has to do with my sub mixes. This track basically identifies as my sub mixes without having to worry about going to check if it's an aux track or whatever, or if they're all routed into there. So I quickly look at the color and I know that it's associated with my sub mixes. I did speak to my previous videos, that you have a workflow for yourself, right? And this is where your workflow applies. In my workflow, I choose to make this one's black, my sub mix is black, so that I can easily identify which tracks are my sub mixes. Are we good with that? Right. Great. Now, as you can see, this is one way of creating a submix, right? There is another way which is longer but does the same exact thing. And I'll show you using my electric guitars. Or let's not do my electric guitars. That's going to take too much time. I've got a lot of tracks going on here. Let's do my bass. Let's say maybe I want to create a submix for my bass, right? So now what I can do next to my bass is create a new aux track. This is the second option you can go for. So let's do that. So I'm going to go to track. I'm going to go to new because I want to create a new track. I'm going to create one track, right? And I'm going to make sure that it's stereo, right, in this case, right? And then I am going to create an aux input, right? And then I'm going to name that my bass sub. And I'm going to click on create. That will create an aux track. How do you see that it's an aux track? It's a symbol, it's got a symbol of an arrow facing down, just like this one right here, right? Remember I said in my previous videos that Pro Tools does have symbols for the different types of tracks. Audio tracks are a wave, and then aux tracks are an arrow facing down, and then master fader is the sigma sign. Right, cool. Now that I've created this track, right, this one is not routed to this one. I just created it because it's a different method from the one that we used on our drum kit. So they're not routed as yet. You can see this one's coming out of this output and this one is coming out of another of the same output, but they are not linked. So this one is not going through this one as yet. For me to be able to do that, right, that means have this one go through this one. I must connect the output of this one to the input of this track right here. So I must connect the output of my bass, right? This is the output of my bass into the input of my aux track. And how I do that is I can click on the input of my aux track, go to bus, because bus transfers tracks internally, right? It's like you've got a city, right? And within that city, you're just driving within that city. But if you want to leave the city, right, in this case, you'd use outputs, which means then you're going out of the city and city. So then it's playing through your speakers, right? So within the city, if you want to transient or move within the city, you'll use buses. So this is an entire city. If I want to move from one track to another part of the city, so let's say maybe this is Johannesburg, and I want to move, let's say, from Rosebank to Sandton, right? I'll use buses because I'm working within the city, right? But if I want to move from Johannesburg to Cape Town being my speakers, I will use outputs, which is that option there. As you can see, that's outputs. So currently, because I want to move within the city, which is within Pro Tools, right, I'm going to use buses. And I'm going to choose bus 1 and 2 right there. As you can see it, bus 1 and 2, right, is the input of my sub, right? Now, in order for me to connect my bass to my bass sub, right, I have to change or have the same bus on my output of the bass. So then I will go to the output of the bass and choose bus 1 and 2. Now this one will play through this one, right? So I'm going to unsolo here. Sorry, let me just activate the group, unsolo, and I'm going to solo my bass. That means only my bass now is playing. Let's put it that way, right? So now these two are connected. How do I know that? Because the output of the bass is the same, has the same path as the input of my bass sub. So it goes out of the bass into my bass sub. Output into the input, right? Now, if I want to rename it, I can right click, and I want you to check. If I rename one, this one will also be renamed. So I can right click here, choose rename, and I'm going to call that bass sub. And I'm going to click on enter. Bam. Now that one is renamed and that one is renamed, and shows that they're the same. So if I play my bass, let's find a section within my song. Let's go to let's go to my edit window, command equals to get to my edit window. Here's my bass. So I'm going to play my bass. I'm just going to place my edit cursor there, and I'm going to go command equals again to go back to my mix window. So now what I want to do is press play. As you can see, it is playing through my aux track. If I mute it, let's play it first, and then I'm going to mute it. And then after I've muted, this is going to stop receiving signal, this track, because then I've muted the one that's sending the signal into this track. As you can see now, I've muted it. No signal is coming through. I'm going to unmute it. Now there was signal playing through. As my general rule and my workflow, I'm going to turn that one into no color, basically black, right? And then I'm going to unsolo that. So basically those are the two methods you can use to basically route a track from one to the next. It's part of your session management to create sub mixes for each of the groups. Let's remember that now. It is part of your session management to create sub mixes for each of the groups. So I'm going to go ahead and use my first step or my first suggestion to create sub mixes. So let's reiterate how we do that. We select all of them, the tracks that I want to send to one track. We press Shift Alt, which speaks to do select all, right? Do to all selected, sorry. And then I'm going to click on my output. I'm going to go to the new track. I'm going to call this one electric, electric guitar sub. I'm going to make sure that it's stereo, aux input, and then I'm going to click on create. And it's going to route all of them into this track right here, and it will play. And all this track again, let's do it, let's test it. I'm soloing. Right, so it's playing through them, and then when I mute, it stops playing. Cool, right? And now I'm going to do the same for my vocals. Shift Alt, click on the output, new track. I'm going to call that lead vocal sub. Create. I'm going to do the same thing for my backing vocals. Shift Alt for do to all selected. Click on the output of one of the tracks. Press new, select new there, and then go backing vocals sub. Right, now I've got these three tracks, which is this one. I'm going to press Control to select this one, and keep Control pressed and select this one by clicking on the nameplate. And you can see now I can change the colors for these three tracks, like I said. Right, we're not done yet. Right, what we've basically done now is kind of dumbed down our mix. So now, whenever we're mixing, if we want to change the overall volume for all of them, literally I can come down here, here. If I want to change the volume for my backing vocals, I just change here. If I want to change the volume within the mix for all my lead tracks, my lead vocals at the same time, I change here. Electric guitars, same thing, I just change here. You understand that? Now what I'm going to do is, and it's still part of, again, this is part of session management, is route all of these, right? I'm selecting them, as you can see. So I've selected my sub, I've selected my drum kit sub, bass sub, electric guitar sub, lead sub, my lead vox sub, and my backing vox sub. Yeah, I've selected all of them, and I want to route those 3 tracks, right? Very important to remember. I'm going to route those 3 tracks into one other track, which is also going to be an aux track, but it's going to be what we call our sub master, right? And I'm going to explain what is going on afterwards. So let's do Shift Alt, which speaks to do all selected. Click on basically one of the outputs of the selected tracks. Remember that you click on only one of the outputs of the selected tracks, right? And then you're going to click New, and you're going to call that Sub Master. Right. And if I go to my far right, as you can see right here, I have my sub master. Now my sub master, on the other hand, I give the same color as my master. Usually that's what I prefer. That's my workflow. You can give it any color. It's really up to you, right? Now, what is basically happening here is, right, or let me first explain the function of the submaster. The submaster now allows me to control the volume of my entire mix, right? That means all my tracks, because what you always want to avoid is changing the volume of your master fader. Né? Always avoid that. That should not. So master fader must always sit on 0. That's fine, right? As you can see, it's sitting on 0 right there, right? But sub master, on the other hand, right, now I can reduce up and down, right? If I play the song, I'm going to reduce the volume, and you'll see on my master fader it's going to go down. Right? So what is actually happening now in our session? Basically, for all these tracks, for example, drum kits, right? They go out of these outputs into this one, right? Which is our drum sub, right? Out of this drum sub into our sub master right here. Same thing with our bass, going out of here into there, into the bass sub, out of the bass sub to our sub master. As you can see, the output of my bass sub, let me just go there, output of my bass sub and the output of my drum kit sub is called sub master, which is the same as the input of my sub master track. You understand? So basically what is happening is that this group, this track, that group are going out of the respective sub mixes to come out of there and go straight to my sub master. This is the same then for my electric guitars, my lead vocals, and my backing vocals. And this is basically then how you perform routing for session management. So if I now want to add a plugin right here, let's just add maybe, let's say a compressor. Where is my compressor? The Pro Tools standard compressor, right there, right? I am now affecting my entire song. So if I want to then make decisions that speak to that affect my entire song, like for example, if I want to add an EQ, if I want to, and change certain things on the song, let's go to the standard EQ. There we go. Right? If I want to add an EQ and change certain things on the song, now I can affect my entire song with just one EQ, which can be very helpful right? I'm not sure if you guys saw the compressor. I added a compressor there. It was in a different window. Sorry, guys. So I added my compressor right there, and I added my EQ right there, right? So if I want to add an EQ or a compressor, that affects my entire song, right? Which can help you in saving CPU power. You understand? Because then you don't have to apply the same compressor and the same EQ on all of the tracks. You understand? Literally now you just do it on one and it will affect all of these tracks together. You understand? Or anything that is going through your sub master. And basically that route moves then from basically your signal moves from the individual audio tracks, which are the electric guitars, the lead, through their respective submixers, which are these tracks right here, the aux tracks, and then from there to your submaster. And because your submaster has the same output as your master fader, then your master fader receives the sum of all your tracks in the session. That's why when I played it, I could reduce the volume from here, and you saw it affect the meter of the master fader. Right, guys, thank you. That is now almost close to the end of how you perform session management.